welcome to Heavyweights. My name is Dennis, and this is Chafin here with me. And today we have got a great little heavyweight program for you, where we talk about the heavy things here, heavyweight stuff. Well, the first thing we're going to do today is talk about our heavyweight weigh-in confusion situation.
Yeah. So we started off by bringing his scales. Thank you. That's where I'm looking for.
His scale.
Right, his scales, and we were checking our weight on scales, and they were just being very inconsistent.
Chafin doesn't trust my scale.
Well, when it gives me a bunch of different weights, I mean, what do you want me to do?
Oh, by the way, we should mention.
I step on it 1 minute. It's mention 8 pounds difference.
We should mention our new poster behind us.
I was going to say something.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we started weighing ourselves at the gym at their scale. So today is the official first weigh-in. Actually, yesterday I lost a pound.
I don't know what I weighed last time.
You didn't weigh yourself yesterday.
I don't remember what I weighed when I weighed myself in yesterday, so I couldn't
what
tell
happens when you get old.
Yeah. But I can tell you that with my shoes on, I weighed 115 today.
You weighed 115? That's amazing.
Yeah, amazingly heavy. 215. I weighed 215.
I was wondering if you were going to catch on to that. Amazing.
Well, you get old and you forget stuff.
You don't know what you're saying either, apparently.
I do not.
But anyway, so yeah, I lost a pound. He doesn't know, but your official weight was 215
today.
Mine was 313 pounds. 313. But anyway, so that was a pound down from yesterday. So and I'm working on my diet. I'm not eating as much. And I'm really working hard. So anyway.
And what I'm going to do is this Sunday, I'm going to fast all day long. Not necessarily for spiritual reasons, but I'm going to just fast for weight loss reasons. I'm going to just take and see what happens to my weigh-in next Monday. That ought to be pretty awesome.
So you're doing it to cheat, gotcha.
I am.
Oh, that makes sense. All right, you're not. Wow, probably not going to help me with the diet, but wow. All right.
Let's talk about the poster, man.
Yeah. So there's two of us.
Yeah. Isn't this crazy? Let's see. Let's move my head.
So the good-looking guys are on this.
Notice I did notice that I made your head a little bit bigger than my head.
My hair loss hasn't progressed too much. This is about a 5-year-old picture right here.
No. And mine is
gained a couple pounds.
Mine is about a 3-week-old picture.
No, that's way older than that.
No, I just took that.
I feel like I've seen that. Anyway, all right.
Yeah, so we got that thing going on there because we are the heavyweights. The heavyweights, we talk about the weighty things.
But before we get into the weighty things, I guess we're gonna start with daily bread.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about our daily devotion today, and one of the things we did was read the daily bread. And so you're gonna read that passage, or you want me to read that passage?
You go ahead.
Okay, so let me see if I can find that passage in the daily bread. The daily bread. So the scripture verse we read was had to do with Psalm 68:11, which says, "The Lord announces His word, and the women who proclaim it are a mighty throng." Isn't that interesting? Most of the time in the Bible, it's kind of a man-dominated thing. There's really some godly women in there. You got Ruth, who's a godly woman. You got Samuel's mother, who's a godly woman. You've got Mary, who's a godly. There's a lot of godly women in there, but most of the time it's focused on men because it was a men-dominated society. Well, the Daily Bread talks about, in 2020, the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the passing of the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which gave the women the right to vote. So old photographs show marchers with banners emblazoned with Psalm 68:11. "The Lord giveth the word, and the women that publish the tidings are a great host." Isn't that interesting? So, women have always been such an important part of the Christian faith. I
Absolutely.
mean, Jesus elevated women before, in at least because we came out of Judaism. In Judaism, women weren't allowed to really go and get further education. They weren't really allowed to be witnesses in a public court. They weren't really allowed to speak in mixed company with men. But Jesus elevated women, and he said some amazing things about women. He said that there's neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female, but basically saying that before God, we are all equal. And he told men in 1 Peter 3, he says, you treat your wife as an equal in the era of life, in eternal life. And so yeah, interestingly, 100 years ago, 100 and
So
some
Jesus was about equality as well.
he was. Yeah, he's the one who gave women their
started
rights. I mean, he's
equality.
the reason why
Right.
women have their rights. And so here 100 years ago, women got the right to vote. And
I think that is, I mean, absolutely so important. I think that women should have all the rights that men have. For sure, and I think it's really shaped our country, and it's made our country better in a lot of different ways. And in a biblical sense, I mean, we need women by our sides, by in marriage, and also for spiritual reasons as well. So yeah, I agree. I think that was a really important passage, and I think that there are some definitely. Well, I guess because we live in a sinful world, in a world that's fallen, a fallen state, everything gets corrupted.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, I'll tune into these. There's a couple of different podcasts that I'll watch. They're what you would call red pill podcasts.
I've heard of that.
Basically, they have a very old school conservative, philosophy essentially, where it's not that men are better, but that feminism has ruined, has ruined women and the modern society and so on and so forth. But I think they go pretty extreme with some of their views. But it does bring to a light to a lot of different things. Like, while voting for women has created so many good things, I think that it's also it allowed for things like feminism, where feminism, in my opinion, has really corrupted today a lot of today's women. I'm not speaking of Christian women, but I think even in some circles as well.
Sure, absolutely. So there's in Christianity there's two main views of women, and they have long big names, and one of them is egalitarianism, and another one is complementarianism. And those are the two main views in Christianity about women and relationships of men and women. Egalitarianism is the principle that everyone's equal, and they all deserve equal rights and opportunities. And at face value, I agree with that. Yeah. Complementarianism says that women and men are created different and have different roles in life.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of where I fall. But here's the thing. I believe women and men are equal but not equivalent. That's really what makes a difference. That's why I'm a complementarianism guy instead of an egalitarianism guy. Yeah. I do believe in many ways, we deserve equal rights. I do believe that. I believe in equal opportunities.
Absolutely.
But I do not believe that we are equal.
It's certainly not, equal outcome either. Because
no equal your outcome and mine are totally different.
Exactly. I mean, I think Jordan Peterson, if you've probably seen something.
He's way too smart.
He's so smart. But he really points it out. He is all for equality as far as opportunity, but there is no such thing as equal outcome.
Well, the problem with mandating equal outcomes is you force an equal amount of men or an equal amount of women or an equal amount of people of different ethnic backgrounds to do the same job, and we don't have the same equal.
Interests.
We are not don't have the equal abilities. We don't have the equal education. We don't have the equal, and so we're different in many ways.
Yeah.
Diversity is another thing that the left really touts, but
Yeah.
when it comes to diversity, they kind of confuse. They got the two issues confused. We believe in diversity among equality. We believe that we are different. We are complementary.
And I think the problem with a lot of the mentality in today is when you say that you say these types of things, they tend, but people tend to go, well, now you're limiting. You put me in a box. You're saying, when I say, oh, well, women are better at this, or we're prone to do that.
Women
or
are
make better, mother or whatever.
I'm going to say something totally politically incorrect. Women are better at childbirth than men.
Pretty good at that.
This whole birthing men thing, it really just hasn't worked. But women are better at a lot of things. Women have an incredible amount of endurance, and I honestly, I got to hand it to women who stay at home and raise children. I personally was not well created to be able to deal with that situation. My wife, on the other hand, beats me hands down in that area. And that's not the only area that she beats me in. And that's why we're complementarianism. She's good at some things way better than I am. And I've come to respect those things.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of better at other things. And that's okay that we're different. It's okay that we're different. I mean, that's what makes us so great.
Yeah. And honestly, there is nothing wrong with a man wanting to be a leader and wanting a woman to follow. Not, and maybe even submissive to a certain point, and I think the Bible talks about that too.
Using that dirty
word.
Right,
but I don't think that's the problem. Is a lot of people think that is dirty. I don't think it's. I think it's honorable. When you're submissive, not in a slave sense, but in a I want to do
voluntary.
I want to do what you want me to do, because I love you. I think that's a beautiful thing, and I think it's natural. I think it's real, and that's the way I believe that God intended it to.
Well,
men to be leaders.
I see one of the key verses in the Christian life is, I'm not sure exactly, it's in John somewhere. Jesus said, no greater love has anyone than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. That's really as far as I'm concerned, a key relationship verse. So what I do for my wife is I lay down my life for her because I love her. And so that's my responsibility. I mean, the New Testament tells me to love my wife. And you know what she does? She lays down her life for me, and we call it something different. We call that submission, but it's really love.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I lay down my life, there's a lot of times when I am submissive to my wife's interests and desires. In fact, to be honest with you, the best relationships are those that give in to each other.
Yeah.
They don't have we create more problems when we want our own way. That's been the source of all of my problems, almost wanting my own way. And so submission is really a key thing. Submit to one another. Yeah. In fact, to be honest with you, the key thought of the Christian life is submit to God.
He does ask for our submission quite often in the Bible.
He does.
Quite often. And I think your wife's all right, by the way. If you wanted my opinion, she's all right.
Well, yeah, she brought you into this world.
Oh, yeah.
And she used to be able to say,
nothing to do with it.
She used to be able to say, I can take you out.
Yeah, she still uses that threat. So anyway, women are amazing. That's my opinion. I've had some griefs with women in the past, but I think women are beautiful in lots of ways. So I love them.
Men are pretty good too.
I think men are much funner to be around, in my personal opinion. Rather be around a man most of the time. But anyway.
All right. Changing the subject, we got a different subject coming up. What do we?
What you were going to talk about?
What we're going to talk about the? Oh yeah, you know what we're going to talk? We're going to talk about the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. Eric Adams has been beat up in the news lately. He is the mayor of New York City, and he stated at some kind of interfaith or faith prayer breakfast that he does not believe in separation of church and state. He should really read the Constitution, because I'm pretty sure that the exact word separation of church or state in there.
It is in there.
It's not.
Oh, yeah, it's not.
Those words are not in the Constitution.
It's not in the Constitution. You're right, it's not. But it's
not in the Bill of Rights.
Where is it?
It's in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote, that there ought to be a high wall of separation.
But it's not
between
lawful.
church and state. It's not the law. In fact, he said, this is what he said: I can't separate my faith from my politics. He said, let's think about this a minute. Let's, instead of say faith, let's use the word believe, because belief and faith are interchangeable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't separate my beliefs from my politics. Well, let's go to someone on the left who believes in some crazy woke ideology. Can they separate their beliefs from their politics? No, I'm going to set aside my beliefs, and we're not going to try to push the communist or leftist or woke ideology. No, that they would never do that. They would say, that's my right because it's secular. No, it's your beliefs. And so our beliefs are inseparable link to our values and
morals.
And we can't separate them from. And in fact, you know, all you have to do is read some of the founding fathers, and some of the founding fathers said this: you cannot have a constitutional republic without faith, without a belief in God, because unless people are restrained by their values, then someone else must restrain them, and that then becomes not a constitutional republic, that becomes a dictatorship.
Right.
So, I mean, it's really important to have faith. Our founding fathers said, and I didn't quote it very well, but they said stuff exactly like that. And it's snowing outside. Look at that.
Oh, my word, it is snowing.
Yeah, well, it's a blizzard.
It's been such a weird year for snow in Oregon.
We've had it, 4 or 5 times here in Roseburg, and we almost never, we get snow maybe once a year.
If that, you know. So.
Yeah, but interesting, separation of church and state. Is it okay for a Christian to be involved in politics? Is it okay for us to say, you know, we want values in our government?
So yeah, I think that 100% a Christian absolutely could be involved in politics, and you could bring your Christian morals and ethics with you. I wouldn't necessarily recommend preaching, although I've watched plenty of congressional hearings and speeches.
Sounds just like preaching.
Sounds exactly like someone up on a pulpit. So, you know, I think a certain amount is okay.
Yeah.
You know, when you become forceful with that, that's a different story.
Well, let's talk about morals. Thou shalt not murder. Do you think murder is okay? You think it's okay for us to say it's not good for people in our society? Let's make a law against murder and say we have to prosecute murder. Do you think that's okay?
Well, no, absolutely, it's
not.
Right.
You know, thou shalt not steal. It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
Should we impose that kind of morality on our society and say it's not okay to steal, or should we say,
okay,
yeah, let's face it, it's important to have values in our government.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, most of the values in laws we get really are straight from the Bible, the Christian, from the Christian.
Most of the men who wrote the Constitution, who signed the Constitution, were men of great biblical value.
Most of them, yeah.
Yeah. So this is an interesting heavyweight topic where this mayor says, hey, I'm a believer. I don't know exactly what his faith is, but he says, I'm a believer and I can't separate my faith from the way that I govern. And you shouldn't ask people to do that.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't. That makes people schizophrenics.
Yeah.
And that's why
and disingenuous, too.
Exactly.
And what's, speaking of disingenuous, I just think it's really disingenuous in of especially the left side, because the fact is they may not claim a religion, but their religion is politics, and they're woke and that. So when they love playing this game, but they're pretty big hypocrites in this.
Well, they have certain values. There's no question they have certain values, and they just want to pass them off as human rights or human values. But
but where do they get their rights
exactly
from?
Where does everything flow from?
Enable.
If I as a person am the sole determiner of my own values, then what? How can I say my values are better than yours? Because you're a human and you disagree with me.
How can I say my values is better than Hitler's? Because Hitler thought his values were number one. So I mean,
well, you know what they say? They say he who writes the history books wins, and they have a totally different viewpoint.
They're trying to rewrite them right now.
But let's just say that your dog comes over to my house, and he does his stuff on my front lawn, and I say to you, hey, don't let your dog do that. And you say, well, why shouldn't I? And I say, because it's wrong. And you say, well, why is it wrong? And I say, because it's not right. Well, why is it not right? And I have to appeal to something. I might say, well, maybe it's against the law. Well, let's change the law then. Okay, so even the law is, pliable and changeable. And we get back to, well, how do we determine whether something is right or wrong? There has to be, if there is no higher value, like a higher standard like God, if there is no lawgiver, then it's just a matter of majority
we're all
vote.
just making up our own.
And let's all vote to wipe out to do ethnic cleansing or something like that.
I mean, well, let's vote for slavery. There was a time when when the laws were okay with slavery.
Yeah.
So if we based
are we going to slavery today, or
I hope not. But if we allowed the laws of our country to determine what's right and what's wrong, our history has proven that's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, we're all accountable to someone, and that someone is God, and one day we will all wake up in His presence, and He will require an accounting from us.
Yeah.
And so His law will stand.
Or we'll wake up as a cockroach or something like that. I wouldn't mind being like a house cat or something. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong, to be honest with you. I'd love to be a house cat.
Yeah.
So,
okay. All right.
Sorry to me.
Sorry. We'll talk about that another time, won't we?
I went from heavyweight to lightweight real quick.
Yeah.
All right. So, is that all we wanted to say on that?
I guess, let's last week we talked about the rapture. We talked about the end times.
Well, the end times, right.
And we kind of closed with just a little bit with the rapture. And, the rapture is an interesting topic because Christianity is divided on the rapture. And you use the word rapture, and there are people that say, man, that's the greatest thing in the world. We've got all these books that are written about it and, movies that are made about it. It's really kind of an exciting idea.
Left Behind.
It's almost like a sci-fi idea. And then you have a whole bunch of Christians that say, the word rapture isn't even in the Bible. But did you know, just so you know, that the word Bible is not in the Bible?
Either is the word Trinity.
No, the word Trinity.
Matter.
In fact, there's a lot of words that we use that are not in the Bible. Just because the word isn't in the Bible doesn't mean the concept isn't in the Bible. So here's where we get the concept of the rapture. We get it from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and I'll read a kind of an extended section. I do not want you to be ignorant, brothers, concerning those who have fallen asleep, have died, lest you sorrow as those who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. For we say this to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself will descend, and that's where we get our word rapture from, the harpazo in the Greek. It's really the word harpazo. Rapture is Latin, And we've chosen the word rapture. The Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, the voice of an archangel, the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them. I'm sorry, that's the word harpazo, caught up together with them in the clouds. I made a mistake there. To meet the Lord in the air, and thus shall we always be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words. So there is a catching away of believers that's coming. It's there.
Yeah.
It's in the Word. The question is, when does it happen? And so that's really where the division is.
Yeah.
So there's a group of people that believes that the catching away happens at Christ's second coming when he comes to judge the earth.
Right.
Then there's a group of people that believes it happens, well, there's different viewpoints here, but a lot of them believe it happens 7 years earlier at a thing called the rapture, when the church is taken away out of the earth, and then 7 years of tribulation follow, and then Christ coming to judge the earth.
When you say 7 years earlier than what?
You got the coming of Christ. You got the rapture, 7 years of tribulation, and then the second coming. So 7 years before the second coming is the rapture. A lot of people believe.
Gotcha.
So, the problem with the rapture is not whether there is a catching away, a harpazo, or a rapture. It's the question of when does the rapture occur? Well, it's very interesting that this passage right here answers the question. So this talked about, if you reviewed it, it says, the Lord is going to come, he's going to descend. Doesn't say he's going to come down all the way to the earth. He's going to give a shout. The trumpet of God is going to sound. Then we're going to be caught up together with the Lord in the clouds. And then, see, the problem is when the Bible was written, there were no chapters and no verses.
Right.
It was written in paragraph form, and we added punctuation and chapters and verses later. So if you keep reading, what happens is 1 Thessalonians 5 says, "But concerning the times and season, brothers, you have no need that I should write you, for you yourself know perfectly that the day of the Lord comes as a thief in the night." So we have the rapture there. Now we got the day in the Lord in chapter 5. And listen to this. Listen really carefully to the pronouns. So the words they and them and we and us. All right? When they say, well, who are they? Well, let's find out. When they say peace and safety, the people who are saying peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. You see, who does the tribulation come on? The day of the Lord? It comes on them. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that this day should overtake you as a thief. You are sons of light, sons of the day. We are not of light and darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night. And those who get drunk at night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love as a helmet of salvation. And then listen carefully. For God did not appoint us to wrath, to that day of wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, that whether we wake or sleep, we should live together with him. So, the chronology here in 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5 is the clearest example in the New Testament of when the rapture happens. First, the rapture happens, the harpazo, the catching away, and then comes the day of the Lord, when sudden destruction comes upon whom? Them. But not on us. Why doesn't it come upon us? Is it that if you look at the book of Exodus, we have the Egyptians and we have the Israel, the Jews, the Hebrews, and the Hebrews were protected in the land of Goshen. Well, we don't have a land of Goshen anymore. We're scattered throughout the world. God could protect us and not allow that sudden destruction to come upon us. That sounds as difficult as the rapture concept itself. For me to protect you from a nuclear explosion.
So
you see what I'm saying?
So what's funny is I was going to ask you a little earlier the question came to my head was why do we need to ascend into the clouds?
Really good question.
So, and that kind of that's interesting, that point you just made. That would make sense as to why we would physically need to do that. if there's some kind of nuclear.
Well, you read the book of
Fallout.
Revelation, and there's a law. There's 7 trumpet judgments, 7 bowl judgments. 7. There's just a tremendous amount of plagues that come on the earth, and God is judging the earth for all of the thousands of years of rebellion that it had. But there's another reason why we're gone, and the other reason why we're gone happens to do with the Old Testament prophecies about the nation of Israel. And you read the book of Daniel in particular, you see that there's still a great tribute. It's called the Day of Jacob's Trouble. There's a 7-year period of trouble that is yet to come on the nation of Israel. God's not finished with Israel yet. They were done, in AD 33 or whatever it was when Christ died, and then the church began. God changed his focus from Israel to the church. But one day he's going to change his focus back from the church to Israel. And the way he's chosen to do that is just to remove all believers from the earth so he can go back to working with the nation of Israel. And he's going to still redeem them to himself for his 1,000-year reign on this earth. It's a really interesting chronology.
Kind of just blows your mind.
It is. It does blow your mind.
No, but the whole thing kind of blows my mind, to be honest with you. I don't. A lot of things do. I mean, it doesn't take much, but the end times really do, because it's just fascinating how things play out and how bizarre things are going to get, and then creatures and all kinds of weirdness. But I think that the rapture is definitely right up there with one of the stranger things, stranger events that happen.
Well, look,
because it's never happened before.
Well, there have been instances of it, of individuals caught up in heaven. Elijah was caught up in heaven. Moses was caught up into heaven. Moses and Elijah.
So is it going to be like that?
Enoch was caught up into heaven.
Because like the descriptions are. I'm trying to think of the descriptions. They saw him going up in heaven in the chariot or whatever. Yeah,
that was Elijah.
But we're not going to go up in chariots. How would you think it's going to go?
Well, it's difficult. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure
is it going to be visible? Is it going to be invisible?
That's right.
I don't know whether it's going to be visible or invisible, but what I do know is that the after effects are going to be instantaneous and disastrous for the face of the earth.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. So, whenever I think of the rapture, I think it's Left Behind, where apparently when we get raptured, we disappear and then our clothes get folded neatly on our seats.
That's another question. Well, Elijah went up with his clothes, so I don't know. Do we go up with our clothes? I don't know. So,
but think about it though. There's going to be airplane pilots. There's going to be people driving their cars. There's going to be crazy things going to happen when people disappear.
Fortunately, most of those airplanes have navigation, autopilot.
But those cars don't. Well, they're getting there. But
so Corinthians tells us how this happens. It says it happens in the twinkling of an eye, and the twinkling of an eye is so quickly that it's almost like a magician. They can do things in the blink of an eye so fast that you cannot see it. I have no clue how they do that. I cannot even on slow-mo. I'm not sure I can catch it. But they do it so quickly. And that's exactly how the rapture is going to happen. It happens in the twinkling of an eye. Yeah. So I think the answer to that is no. We're not going. Nobody's going to see it.
I think you're going
to be here, and then you're going to be gone. And I'm going to say, hey, Chafin, where'd you go?
Unless of course, and God does everything for a reason. But unless there's a reason for Him wanting to show the world that we're ascending to heaven, and so that people can see it happen. But I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's an interesting concept.
It's interesting all around.
Yeah.
I love talking about the end times. I just think it's one of the most fascinating things. Because, what other religion, actually, when you think about it, what other religion talks about how it's going to be at the end?
Yeah, whatever the religion has a history of how God intervened in our history too. So it's both the same way.
Yeah.
This is let's face it, the rapture is a crazy concept.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. And I wouldn't believe it if it weren't for things like Jesus' death and resurrection, the 10 plagues, historical things that history can't seem to explain away, and there's historical evidence for. So I say I base it on the fact that, you know, the Old Testament really happened. And,
right. I mean, and they keep coming up with new evidence. Secular scientists, they keep coming up with new evidence, such as the flood, the young Dryas. I don't even heard of this, but the young Dryas theory or whatever. I can't remember what it's called, but something like that. But basically, there's evidence of a huge flood throughout the entire world, and there's physical evidence of this.
Seashells on Mount Everest.
But these scientists, they're not Christians, but they're proclaiming all these different evidence of it, and that's one of the things. But truly, there is the science community, though, is stifling these theories and stifling anything that has to do with that lines up with the biblical doctrine.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's face it, to believe in God, then you have to decide that you're accountable to Him. And to be accountable to God, that means you have
Raises
to
a lot of questions.
that your ways of thinking are wrong, His ways of thinking are right. You need to submit to God. Yeah. And I got to tell you that, just knowing me personally, that I'm got a lot of personal pride. We all do. And I don't like to be wrong too often. I try really hard to. You don't believe that, do you? But you know, and so when you talk about the concept of God, it's threatening to people.
Yeah.
And you bring up religion in mixed company, and people get really uncomfortable because it's threatening their viewpoints.
Right.
But listen, if there is a God, what's really threatening is the idea that there's a heaven to gain and a hell to shun.
Yeah.
And that's really threatening.
And it scares people, and people don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't like being put into a corner. But the reality is there is a reality, and we are all going to die. So you really do have to make a decision what is right and what is wrong. And we have come to our conclusions that Jesus is the way.
The way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through Jesus, he said.
Yeah.
Well, I think that probably should wrap it up today. Hey, we're heavyweights.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
And, good topic. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at that. I'm Dennis. Well, I got nothing on you.
I got a lot of fat going on.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.